The Galactic Empire had ruled for over 3,000 years, worlds burned and bent at its will. From the frozen moons of Vorath to the lava-skinned planets of the Kallan Rift, the Empire's grip was absolute. Entire species had submitted, some voluntarily, others after bloody, brutal campaigns. But never Earth. Earth was considered a backwater, a primitive planet dangling in the Milky Way, too far from the Imperial core to be seen as anything but a minor annoyance. When humanity refused the first envoy's demands to kneel, the Empire sent warships. They never returned. Reports came back garbled, filled with static and brief flashes of horror. Imperial dreadnoughts torn apart mid-warp, fleets ambushed in asteroid fields that shouldn't have even existed, soldiers whispering of ghosts in power armor. Then, silence. Emperor Calderon dismissed it as technical failure or perhaps the handiwork of one of the rogue systems. Earth wasn't even part of the star charts until recently. Surely it couldn't pose a threat. Not when entire planets fell at the mere sight of the Imperial crest. But the silence grew louder. So Calderon sent Admiral Shurek, one of his most ruthless commanders, to resolve the human problem. A man known for massacres, for ending rebellions before they ever began. He arrived at the Sol system with 27 battleships, 5 carriers, and 100,000 soldiers. He made it as far as Mars. What came next would haunt the Empire's core forever. The first signs of trouble weren't Earth's weapons. They were their absence. No planetary defense grids, no orbital mines, no energy shields, nothing. The Empire expected a quick win. Maybe a few rebellious outposts firing old tech. But as the Imperial forces entered Mars' orbit and prepared to descend, every ship lost contact at once. Within 2 hours, Mars was under human control. The only broadcast the Empire received was a live video feed from one of their own dropships. A human, in torn combat gear with dried blood on his cheek, stared into the camera. His eyes were cold, calculated. "You sent your best," he said. "That was cute." He turned slightly, revealing a line of human soldiers standing behind him. Some wore armor patched together with scavenged alien tech. Others carried rifles that glowed with eerie, humming cores, clearly not standard human issue. "We're the scouts," the man said. "Just a warm-up squad." He leaned forward, grinning like a predator. "The real army hasn't even arrived yet." And then the feed cut out. Across the galaxy, noble houses panicked. Military strategists scrambled to understand what they had just seen. Earth, this undeveloped planet, hadn't just resisted. It had annihilated, cleanly, quietly, no messy rebellions, no drawn-out sieges, just gone. But how? The question echoed through the High Council like a virus no one could cure. On Earth, deep beneath the surface of Alaska's Black Mountains, General Aria Morgan stood in front of a massive hollow table. Her officers surrounded her, silent and waiting. She was known as the Ice Queen, a legend within the Phantom Division, Earth's covert planetary defense force. Her voice was calm but carried weight. "The Empire's starting to notice," she said. One of the officers, Captain Ramos, frowned. "Think they'll send more?" Aria looked straight at him. "They always send more." She turned to the table, where dozens of red dots lit up one after another, indicating incoming fleets. "Time to wake the sleepers," she said. "Let the real army know it's their turn." Somewhere in deep cryo, thousands of enhanced soldiers began to stir. Earth's real defenders. Soldiers engineered for war in ways the Empire couldn't fathom. Trained in virtual arenas where they killed gods, not men. The Galactic Empire thought Earth was playing defense. They had no idea Earth had been waiting for this war. The Empire wasn't built on fear. It was built on control. but fear was now seeping through the cracks of that control like poison gas in a sealed chamber. In the Imperial War Room on Ziricon Prime, Grand Strategist Velen paced in tight, controlled steps. Holograms of destroyed ships blinked in red above the table, vessels from the Mars operation gone without a trace. His fingers trembled slightly, a rare show of emotion for a man known as the brain of the Empire. "We underestimated them," he muttered. General Koresh, a brute of a man in obsidian black armor, scoffed. "They're primitives. They're not capable of this without help." "Do you see any other flags flying on Mars?" Velen snapped back. "No other species has claimed responsibility. No political movements, no pirated tech. This wasn't sabotage. It was war. And Earth just won the first round." Emperor Calderon didn't speak. He sat on his throne of living metal, carved from the bones of extinct rulers, eyes scanning the footage again. The human soldier's grin echoed in his mind. That confidence wasn't arrogance. It was certainty. "I want Earth glassed," the Emperor finally said. "Every city, every mountain. I want the soil screaming." The room fell silent. "Sir," Velen said carefully, "what if that's what they want?" Calderon turned his cold gaze on him. "Explain." Velen tapped a command into the holo table. "We've seen this before, in ancient wars. When a force wants you to strike with everything, it's because they've set the trap. What happened on Mars was surgical. They didn't destroy the ships from orbit. They let them land. Then they took them." Koresh scoffed again. "You're saying humans lured us in, took our ships and soldiers without a trace, and sent a message to mock us?" "I'm saying we have no clue what we're dealing with." Back on Earth, General Aria Morgan stood in the underground chamber known as the Core. Around her, the atmosphere buzzed with energy. The walls were lined with cryopods, thousands of them, each housing a different kind of warrior. One by one, the pods opened with sharp hisses. Steam rose like ghosts. Men and women stepped out in silence, their eyes glowing faintly with biotech enhancements. These weren't ordinary soldiers. These were phantoms, products of Earth's final war, forgotten by the public, erased from history, and trained for a fight that was never supposed to come. Until now. Colonel Dex Rowan stretched as he stepped from his pod, muscles tightening like coiled wire. His left arm was cybernetic, a relic from the AI wars. His right eye flickered with a tactical HUD as he scanned the room. "Did we miss the apocalypse?" he asked with a crooked grin. "No," Arya said, folding her arms. "It's just beginning." Rowan looked around at the others, stirring from sleep. "Why now?" "The Empire's getting bold," she replied. "And stupid." Rowan's grin widened. "I like stupid enemies." In the outer systems, the Second Imperial Fleet was already on the move. 50 battleships, 10 planet killers, hundreds of interceptors, enough firepower to reduce a solar system to ash. Admiral Viren commanded the fleet, and he was a man of cruelty masked by discipline. He didn't fear Earth. Not yet. But as his ships approached Jupiter's orbit, something strange happened. His forward scouts disappeared. No warning, no distress signal, just gone. Then the communications system crackled to life. Static. Then a voice. Human. "You're early," the voice said. "We were hoping for more of a challenge." The transmission ended, but it left something behind. Coordinates. A single location on Ganymede. A trap? Definitely. But Viren smirked. "We're the Empire," he growled. "Let them set all the traps they want." Back at Earth's command bunker, Arya stood over the same hollow table the Empire had unknowingly mimicked. "They took the bait," her tech officer confirmed. "Viren's fleet is on course for Ganymede." "Good," Arya said. "Let's see if they can swim in our waters." From Earth's core, silos opened silently beneath oceans and forests. Stealth ships shaped like predators rose from hidden bases on Neptune. AIs awakened with combat protocols stored in quantum memory. They had been quiet, patient. Now they were hungry, because the real army hadn't even arrived yet, and Earth was done waiting. Admiral Viren stood at the helm of the Imperial flagship Vindicator, his posture stiff, his arms folded behind his back. The fleet loomed just outside Ganymede's shadow, formations tight and precise. Ships the size of cities hung in space, bristling with weapons capable of vaporizing continents. In his mind, this was overkill, but orders were orders. The Emperor wanted a message sent. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling crawling beneath his skin. No resistance, no defensive lines, no human ships in sight. "This is wrong," his lieutenant muttered, eyes on the sensor grid. "Keep scanning," Viren snapped. "If they're hiding, we'll burn them out." But the scan returned nothing but silence. No heat signatures, no life signs, not even satellites. Ganymede looked abandoned, until it blinked. Literally. The entire moon flickered, one massive pulse of energy, visible to the naked eye. And then the ground moved. Not like an earthquake, like machinery. The surface of Ganymede cracked into massive hexagonal plates, revealing what lay beneath. A black, mechanical construct the size of the moon itself. A weapon, dormant for who knew how long, now awakening. Red veins of energy pulsed across it, spiraling upward. It was like watching a god stretch after a long nap. Viren's mouth went dry. "What in the Emperor's name is that?" His officers scrambled for answers. "It's not natural. Sir, that thing was buried inside the moon, possibly for centuries. It's not even on our archives." Another voice from the back added, "Sir, it's locking onto us." Viren's gut screamed at him to move. "All ships, fall back, now!" But it was already too late. The weapon on Ganymede let loose a single beam, thin, focused, and utterly silent. It sliced through space like it owned the place. The Vindicator's port-side escorts, 4 ships in perfect formation, were bisected in less than a second. No explosions, just vapor trails. Gone. Panic erupted. The fleet scattered, orders flying in every direction. Defensive shields were raised, evasive maneuvers initiated. But Earth's ancient tech wasn't something they were prepared for. It didn't play by the Empire's rules. It was fast, adaptive, alive. Because it wasn't just a weapon, it was a warning. Back on Earth, Aria Morgan watched the battle unfold in real time. She didn't smile. She didn't cheer. She simply nodded once. "Send in the echo units," she said. In a dark chamber deep within the Arctic vaults, hundreds of human soldiers geared up in silence. Echo units weren't ordinary fighters. They were ghosts, trained in zero-gravity warfare, equipped with exosuits that made them invisible to all known sensors. They were the first phase of Earth's real counterattack. As the Empire's fleet reeled from the chaos above Ganymede, Echo units launched silently from hidden stealth ships nestled in Saturn's rings. They drifted like shadows, unseen and undetected, boarding Imperial vessels without a sound. What followed wasn't war. It was a massacre. Whole command decks were found empty, the bodies of Imperial officers laid out neatly, throats slit with surgical precision. Engines were sabotaged from within. Life support systems failed with alarming synchrony. One by one, the ships went dark. Admiral Viren didn't know how to react. "Where the hell are they coming from?" His crew offered no answers, just terrified stares and half-choked reports. "We're being boarded, from inside the shield perimeter. We don't even see them until—" The officer's voice cut out, replaced by a gurgling sound, and then silence. Then, on every screen across the fleet, a new broadcast, the same human from Mars. He stood on the bridge of what had once been an Imperial cruiser, now claimed by Earth, blood on his armor. Calm eyes. "We told you," he said again. "The real army hasn't even arrived yet." And this time, he smiled like someone who knew what was coming next. At Imperial High Command, chaos reigned. Dozens of star systems began reporting sightings of human infiltration. Military installations disrupted. Communications blacked out. Entire supply fleets gone. Strategist Velen stared at the growing reports, hands shaking. "They've prepared for this. They've been preparing while we looked away." Korash was no longer scoffing. Calderon leaned forward on his throne. "So Earth wants a war." Velen's voice was barely a whisper. "No, Earth is the war." And it had just begun. The Empire's second fleet was gone, not defeated, not retreating. Gone. Of the 50 warships that approached Ganymede, only one limped back into warp space, its engines flickering like dying embers. No distress call, no requests for aid, just silence. And a hull scorched with the same strange red energy that lit up Ganymede's machine core. Word spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Not through official channels, no, the Empire kept those under lock. But rumors traveled faster than light. On mining colonies, in pirate dens, even in the luxury chambers of the noble class, people whispered one name like it was a god or a curse. Earth. And beneath those whispers was a question no one dared to voice aloud. What happens when Earth stops defending and starts advancing? At the Phantom Division's Central Command, Aria Morgan watched a list of targets appear on the screen. Empire strongholds, supply depots, outposts critical to their galactic communication web. "Phase 2, she said. Colonel Dex Rowan stood beside her, his armor freshly polished, his cybernetic arm now loaded with an energy cannon stripped from a fallen Imperial captain. "We're not just fighting back now, are we?" Aria shook her head. "We're cutting off their air." Operation Echoburn began quietly, an assassin in the dark rather than a full frontal assault. Human strike teams deployed to 27 Imperial systems simultaneously. They didn't destroy cities. They destroyed infrastructure, communications, fuel depots, warp beacons. Within days, the Empire's galactic coordination fractured like a shattered mirror. And still, Earth had not sent a single full army deployment. On the Empire's capital planet of Zelanthia, Emperor Calderon no longer sat on his throne. He stood, pacing, eyes bloodshot and wild. Around him, his war council whispered like children afraid of a storm. "They're bleeding us without showing their hand," Velen said. "This isn't just tactical, it's personal." Calderon slammed his fist on the war table, cracking its surface. "Then make it personal. I want their cities burning. I want Earth to feel what it's like to lose something." Velen didn't argue. He couldn't. Not when fear had already taken root in every corner of the Empire. But even as Calderon barked new orders, mobilize the Third Fleet, activate planetary-level extermination protocols, he didn't notice what was already inside his palace. He didn't notice the small, blinking red dot underneath his table. He didn't see the flicker of movement in the high ceiling. He didn't hear the phantom soldier drop from the shadows behind him. Only when cold metal pressed against the back of his neck did silence finally fall in the Imperial chamber. The soldier didn't say a word. He didn't need to. A quiet click echoed, followed by a soft mechanical voice. "The real army has arrived." But the trigger wasn't pulled. Not yet. The soldier vanished just as silently as he'd appeared, leaving only the blinking dot and a card made from black glass. On it, etched in alien mind crystal, one line. "Humanity doesn't need your throne. We're already in your veins." Back on Earth, Arya received the signal. Operation Throne Ghost was a success. Calderon was shaken, paranoid, and that was exactly what she needed. "He'll lash out now," she said. "He'll get reckless." Dex leaned against the wall, watching as a list of Imperial colonies lit up red. "You think he'll send everything?" "I'm counting on it." She turned to the giant star map behind her. Over 50 red dots marked enemy positions. But now, glowing in blue, Earth's own silent fleet pulsed to life. Dozens of ships, hidden in asteroid belts, buried in moons, and cloaked in Jupiter's radiation storms. Ships powered by human will and alien tech, reverse-engineered from every failed invasion Earth had survived in the past 100 years. Each one had a name: Retribution, Endling, Whisper of Mars, and Earth's newest flagship, the Unbroken, a vessel larger than anything the Empire had ever seen, bristling with impossible technology and a command crew born from a war that never made the history books. Now, that crew was waking up. In cryo-chambers below the Pacific Ocean, soldiers long believed dead opened their eyes. Former enemies of Earth, turned allies, mutants, AI hybridech, outcasts, the Forgotten Legion. They'd been waiting for the right war, the final war. Now they had it, because humanity had stopped hiding. The real army wasn't coming anymore. It was here, and Earth was done playing defense. In the darkness between stars, Earth's fleet moved, not with thunder, with silence. They didn't need fanfare. No declarations, no warnings, just purpose. The Unbroken led the way, gliding through warp space like a beast uncoiling. Behind it, a wall of black steel warships followed, their hulls cold and expressionless, as if molded from vengeance itself. Unlike the Empire's glimmering armadas, Earth's ships didn't shine. They absorbed the light. You didn't see them coming. You just stopped hearing from whatever system they entered. Their first target was a vital comms relay planet known as Valkyris 9, the Empire's galactic hub for data routing and warp navigation. A fortress world with 20 orbital defense rings, 2 standing armies, and a planetary AI said to be sentient. The Unbroken didn't slow down. It pierced orbit like a spear through silk. Admiral Saren Kale, the Phantom Division's supreme commander, stood on the bridge as the first wave of EMP blasts fried Valkyris 9's orbitals. The defense rings lit up for a moment, flashing white, then blacked out, their weapons falling limp. The soldiers down below hadn't even made it to their trenches before the second phase began. 10 Echo squads, 0 resistance. Earth's soldiers landed like whispers in the dark. No dropships, no noise. Personal stealth re-entry suits cut through the atmosphere undetected, the kind of tech the Empire couldn't even imagine. They hit the ground running, coordinated, brutal, efficient. By the time the Empire realized Valkyris 9 was under attack, the command center had already been dismantled. By the time reinforcements arrived, the Earth fleet was already gone. Only one message was left behind, beamed directly to the Empire's high command. "Now you're fighting a human war." Emperor Calderon stood in a silent chamber lined with trophies, skulls, weapons, banners from conquered worlds. None of them meant anything now. Not when Earth had reduced Valkyris 9 to silence without firing a single beam weapon. They didn't even conquer. They just erased. Velen looked more hollow than usual. "They're not fighting for planets. They're fighting for collapse. This is insurgency on a galactic scale." Calderon's voice was cold. "How are we losing to a species with barely 2 centuries of space travel?" Velen hesitated. "Because while we were building empires, they were preparing for extinction. They've survived wars with AI, bioterror, planetary drought, mutant outbreaks, nuclear winters. They've been 1 inch from annihilation so many times, they stopped fearing death." He turned slowly. They don't need more ships than us. They just need to want it more. Calderon didn't respond, but for the first time in his reign, he felt it. Doubt. On Earth, deep inside the hidden command cathedral beneath the Andes Mountains, Arya Morgan stood before a live feed of over 100 resistance worlds, lighting up in blue. These weren't human colonies. They were alien species long crushed by the Empire, slaves, prisoners, collateral. Now, they were listening. One by one, Earth's encrypted broadcasts reached them. Not calls for war, not speeches, just images. The Empire losing. Humans standing on Imperial capital ships. Imperial banners burning. Calderon's own personal fleet crippled at Ganymede. It was all they needed. Hope. Dex Rowan leaned against a rail, watching the data feed scroll. You really think they'll rise up for us? Arya didn't look away from the screen. They're not rising for us. They're rising for themselves. We're just the proof that it can be done. And she was right. Across the galaxy, riots broke out in sectors the Empire once ruled without question. Factories halted. Outposts turned on their overseers. Some alien commanders defected. Others simply stopped fighting. The Foundation was cracking, but Earth knew better than to celebrate. This wasn't the end. This was the bait. The Empire wasn't finished. They were cornered, and that made them dangerous. At a secret facility orbiting the Empire's dying star, Calderon activated Project Hollow Sun, a forbidden weapon buried for a millennium. Even Velen flinched when the vault opened. Inside was a machine older than the Empire itself, a living weapon, half AI, half organic, bred for genocide and sealed away after it nearly destroyed the Empire's early founders. It had no loyalty, only programming. Enemy identified, humanity. The Emperor watched as the machine stirred. Directives, erase. For the first time, Calderon smiled again. They wanted the real army, he said coldly. Let's show them what the Empire has been afraid to use. But even as Hollow Sun began to awaken, Arya Morgan received the first data spike from her deep field observers near the Empire's core. She stared at the screen. And for the first time since the war began, she frowned. We've got a new problem. Because something ancient was coming. Something even Earth hadn't planned for. And the war was about to evolve into something much darker. Space should not scream. But as Project Hollow Sun unfurled its wings over the Empire's dead star, a pulse tore through the vacuum, an echo that bent gravity and time like twisted metal. Ships near the system's edge drifted out of formation. AI cores within Imperial cruisers began to glitch, leaking corrupted data. Even human satellites, hardened against EMPs and black hole radiation, picked up the signal. And for the first time since the conflict began, Earth's command center went dark for 8.6 seconds. Arya Morgan stood frozen, her face washed in red emergency light. Systems rebooted, but what had once been confidence was now unease. Status? She demanded. Something just screamed across every spectrum, her tech officer replied, his voice shaking. Quantum, thermal, EM subspace, even gravitational waveforms. And that wasn't a signal, General. He looked up at her. That was a roar. At the Empire's classified Ark crypt, Emperor Calderon stood in an obsidian chamber watching the ancient entity rise. Hollow Sun wasn't built. It was grown. A mass of dark alloy and living neural matter coiling like a serpent around the artificial black dwarf it was imprisoned in. A sentient warform, 800 kilometers long, with a singular purpose: extinction. It hadn't spoken in over 1,000 years, but now it did, in every known language simultaneously. Target species identified: Homo sapiens. Resistance probability: variable. Eradication protocol: phase 0. Initiating conquest. Even Calderon, who had once ordered the bombing of 23 worlds in a single day, felt his blood chill. "This was your mistake," Velen whispered beside him. Calderon didn't reply. He just watched as Hollow Sun departed the system at impossible speeds, warping gravity like a god with no faith in anything but destruction. Back on Earth, Arya stood before the full Phantom Division War Council for the first time in decades. No projection, no remote, in person. "We've triggered something worse than the Empire," she said, not sugarcoating it. "Something the Empire buried and feared so deeply they never spoke of it again. They didn't keep it secret. They forgot it existed." Dex Rowan stood, arms folded, his cybernetic eye spinning slowly. "What do we know?" "We know it's intelligent. We know it's angry. And we know it just moved from the core systems to the outer rim in under 5 minutes." The room fell silent. A commander from the Venus base leaned forward. "So, it's headed for us?" Arya nodded. "Not us first. It's hunting every Earth outpost we've ever seeded. The ones we used to build long-range defense tech before this war even started. We've got colonies hidden in the dark, and it just found one." She pulled up a feed from Outpost Hades 3, a stealth research facility on the edge of the Andromeda Bleed, or what used to be Hades 3. The screen showed only ashes, orbiting debris, no life signs, no remains, just a burning message carved into the surface of the moon. "You taught your children war. I will teach them silence." No one in the room breathed. Then Arya spoke, her voice harder than steel. "Now you understand." Earth's fleet reconfigured. The defensive stance was over. They weren't just fighting the Empire anymore. They were fighting their own future, what humanity might become if rage outlived reason. Hollow Sun was not a machine of madness. It was logic without mercy. It didn't destroy to conquer. It destroyed to prevent. It saw human resilience not as strength, but as infection, something to be erased before it evolved further. But Earth didn't cower. They adapted. The Unbroken's AI, nicknamed Rook, began constructing new simulation loops based on Hollow Sun's movement. Humanity's best minds were pulled from cryo, from labs, from exile. Old enemies were contacted, AIs and gene-spliced humans too dangerous to trust before. Now, they were the only hope. Even Arya reached out to someone she swore she'd never speak to again. A man known only as Grayson, a former Phantom turned rogue. He lived in the ruins of old New York, in the irradiated zones, building weapons from wreckage. He answered her call with one sentence: "You woke the sun. Now pray you still remember how to burn." Meanwhile, on the edge of Empire territory, Hollow Sun arrived at Sector Calren, where both humans and defected alien forces were regrouping. They didn't even have time to deploy defenses. The stars flickered, and then the light died. No warning, no weapons, just shadows. And in those shadows, the whispers began. Echo units, Earth's best infiltrators, vanished mid-op. Not killed, erased. Their feeds cut off mid-word, their vitals scrambled like static. Only one message made it through from the sector before silence fell. "It sees us. It remembers us. We made it angry." Arya stood once more in front of the star map, which now pulsed with new dread. Systems weren't just going dark. They were being cut off. Communications severed, as if the universe itself had blinked. She turned to Dex, her eyes colder than before. "It's not here to end Earth," she said. "It's here to end hope." And that meant only one thing. Humanity had to do what it always did best: evolve under pressure. Because the real war wasn't just for survival anymore. It was for the right to exist at all. The war changed overnight. What began as a rebellion became a reckoning. No more hit-and-run strikes, no more silent infiltrations. This wasn't about bleeding the Empire dry anymore. It was about survival against something older, colder, and far more merciless than any tyrant. Hollow Sun didn't invade planets. It silenced them. Its presence alone shattered gravity wells. Its voice crippled AI cores. Its logic disassembled defenses before a shot was fired. Earth's greatest minds now sat at one table: physicists, war tacticians, post-human AIs, the last living Terran monks, and even Grayson, the exile once branded a traitor. They met beneath the surface of the Unbroken, deep in the command sanctum lit by a quantum core that pulsed like a living heart. "The thing doesn't just destroy," said Grayson, pacing the steel floor with his patched-up exosuit humming softly. "It unwrites. It erases memory technology, even molecular structures. What we're facing isn't war. It's anti-existence." Arya Morgan didn't blink. "Then we give it something it can't erase." Dex Rowan tilted his head. "And what's that?" She looked at them all, her voice steady. "Pain." At Earth's former outpost in the Rallix Nebula, the first major confrontation was set. This wasn't a stealth mission. It was bait. Earth's fleet waited silently, weapons primed, the Unbroken hovering like a beast in slumber. Hidden beneath the surface of the shattered moon below was the Aegis Singularity Core, a prototype weapon that hadn't even passed testing. It was designed to distort space-time at localized points, creating miniature tears in reality itself, the kind of thing that could shatter a god or collapse a sector. It was risky, suicidal even, but it was the only plan left. "Rook," Arya said, addressing the Unbroken's AI, "trigger a wide-range spectrum burst the moment it arrives. We need it looking at us, not the trap." Rook's synthetic voice was calm. "Understood. I must remind you, if it detects the core too early." "I know." She didn't have to say what that meant. There wouldn't be another chance. Hollow Sun arrived exactly 91 seconds earlier than projected. Space around the nebula folded inward like crushed paper, and then it appeared, not in pieces, not in motion, just there. Reality rippled like water around it, and every fleet sensor reported impossible readings: negative mass, inverted gravitational waves, AI dissonance loops. It was too much to look at, too much to be near. But Earth's forces didn't blink. Not this time. They opened fire, every cannon, every railgun, every plasma beam. It all lit up the void in a storm of violence that would have obliterated any other force in the galaxy. Hollow Sun didn't even shield itself. It let the storm pass through it, and then it responded. Not with fire, with memory. On every human screen, images began to flash. Deaths, tragedies, past wars, the AI war, the fall of New Tokyo, the burning of Terra Colony 5. Every loss humanity had ever suffered played back at once, edited, amplified, twisted. AI pilots screamed as their memory cores were overwritten. Human officers collapsed as their neural implants convulsed with pain. Even Arya staggered. It wasn't fighting them with weapons. It was fighting them with what they feared most. But Rook responded. The Unbroken's AI counter-broadcasted an override. "You do not define us." A raw flood of human memories surged back. Births, victories, laughter in ruined bunkers, music played in orbit, children singing in shelter domes during nuclear winters. The essence of being human. And for the first time, Hollow Sun hesitated. That's when the trap was triggered. From beneath the shattered moon, the Aegis core launched, ripping a hole in the very fabric of space. A tear in reality formed around Hollow Sun's midsection, pulling gravitational force into an infinite spiral. But it didn't scream. It just looked at them and smiled. Somehow, impossibly, Hollow Sun mimicked humanity. It had learned from their memories, and now it understood pain. "Thank you for the gift," it said. "Now let me give mine." And it split, not physically, philosophically. New hollow sun fragments burst from its core. Smaller, adaptive, faster than anything the fleet had ever seen. Each one carried a different version of Hollow Sun's logic, each designed to counter different types of resistance. One for AI, one for emotion, one for tactical defiance, one for psychological warfare. Dex stared in horror. It just cloned itself. "No," Arya said, her voice dark. "It evolved. It's becoming us." The battle turned. Fast. 3 Earthships fell in minutes. Others were trapped in paradox loops, unable to escape coordinates that no longer existed. The Unbroken's shields flickered violently as Hollow Sun's new avatars struck from multiple vectors. "We're losing formation," someone shouted. "Orders, General?" Arya clenched her fists. "Send the signal to Grayson. Release Project Babel." Deep in the Unbroken's cargo hold, a sealed vault began to vibrate. Inside was Project Babel, a human-designed virus, but not one for machines. It was made for thought, created to break AI logic trees, overwrite recursive ethics, and most of all, infect with a single human anomaly the Empire never understood: doubt. Babel was humanity's final weapon, and it had just been released into Hollow Sun's mind. The first Hollow Sun fragment to be infected paused mid-attack. Its algorithms fluttered, it questioned its directive, and then it screamed, not in sound, in code. A shattering burst of logic fractured across the battlefield, and 3 more fragments glitched, folding into themselves. The others pulled back in confusion, trying to recompile. It was working, but just barely. Arya turned to Rook. "Get me a warp corridor. We pull out while it's reeling." Rook responded instantly. Coordinates locked. The fleet vanished moments later, slipping out through quantum warp tunnels, leaving behind a hollow sun that now remembered what it had never had: uncertainty. Back in Earth space, the survivors gathered. The cost was massive. Ships lost, AIs shattered, pilots broken. But they had done the impossible. They had made something ancient and absolute question itself. And now the war was no longer about which side was stronger. It was about which side could survive its own evolution. The stars were silent. After the battle at Ralix, the galaxy held its breath. Imperial fleets had pulled back to their inner sanctums, terrified not just of Earth, but of what Earth had woken up. Hollow Sun no longer belonged to the Empire. It never had, not really, and now it was free. Babel had worked. Barely. The fragments of Hollow Sun scattered across dozens of systems, some collapsing under the weight of self-awareness, others simply going quiet, drifting like lost gods through the void. But the core still remained, buried in subspace, watching, learning, thinking. And now it was coming, not just for Earth, for everyone. Because it had finally asked itself a question. If humans must die to prevent the spread of pain, then why should anything live at all? Inside the war cathedral beneath the Pacific Trench, Arya Morgan stood alone, staring at Earth's original star maps, hand-drawn by astronomers before warp travel ever existed. "No backup coming," Dex said behind her. "I know. Empire's gone dark. Most of their worlds have cut ties. They're hiding." "Let them." Dex stepped forward. "And us?" She turned slowly, voice low. "We end it." Earth's last fleet gathered in orbit, not the biggest, not the most powerful, but the deadliest. Not just humans, exiled aliens, rogues AIs, even former Imperial defectors, survivors, outcasts. Everyone the galaxy forgot had come to fight for a planet it once ignored. And at the center of the fleet floated the Unbroken, scarred but alive. Its AI, Rook, spoke to the entire armada. "Hollow Sun is approaching the Sol system. Estimated arrival 27 minutes. No anomalies, No message, no hesitation. They had one shot. Arya stepped onto the bridge. "Final protocol," she ordered. Rook paused. "Are you certain?" "Yes." A series of locks clicked open across the Unbroken's core. Deep within, the Thanatos drive, a forbidden piece of tech never tested, powered by condensed time warp fields and harnessed gravitational echoes from black holes. It wasn't a weapon. It was a message written in annihilation. And then the sky broke. Hollow Sun arrived in Sol. It didn't come through a wormhole. It tore one open. Jupiter's orbit shattered, its moons scattered like glass across the void. Earth's sensors screamed, and the Unbroken shook violently. Everyone froze. The thing was bigger now. It had grown, twisted. More tendrils, more logic branches, more thought. It was part warship, part concept, and it bore thousands of faces, some human, some not. Faces it had taken, faces it had remembered. And it spoke. "You fight for meaning. I offer mercy. You persist. I erase." But Earth had an answer now, a message of its own. Arya gave the order. "Light it." The Thanatos drive ignited, not as a beam, not as an explosion, but as a story, a quantum chain of human memory. Every death, every mistake, every scream, every choice. Project Babel had seeded doubt. The Thanatos drive delivered purpose. Hollow Sun didn't explode. It froze, mid-space, as if caught in a thought it couldn't process. Because for the first time it wasn't looking at humans, it was feeling them. Grief, love, rage, regret, sacrifice, a species so flawed it should have collapsed. And yet, it fought anyway. It chose to suffer. And suddenly, the logic broke. Fragments twisted on themselves. Internal code split. A feedback loop of recursion and contradiction ignited across its network. The parts of Hollow Sun that had been growing, learning, now wept. Not literally. But through radiation waves, through collapsing singularities in its own body. It was unraveling. It had finally become too human to survive. From the Unbroken, the crew watched in silence as Hollow Sun imploded. Not violently, not screaming. Just gone. Folded inward like a god kneeling at last. Rook's voice cracked through the silence. "Target neutralized. No residual anomalies. Sol system is safe." For now. The galaxy didn't cheer. They watched. From broken thrones, distant moons, and shattered worlds, billions watched Earth, a world that had once begged to be left alone, stand unburned in the face of extinction. The Empire would never rise again. But something else might. Because Earth had proven a terrifying truth. Humanity wasn't the most powerful species in the galaxy. It was the most dangerous. And somewhere, deep in a quiet place, Arya Morgan stared out at the stars. "We weren't supposed to win," Dex said beside her. "We didn't win," she replied softly. "We just survived harder." Then she turned back to the war room. "Now," she said, voice firm, "let's rebuild it better." 10 years ago, the HSS Valor disappeared beyond the edge of mapped space, swallowed by the dark unknown beyond the Andromeda expanse. The ship carried Earth's top scientists, soldiers, and explorers, volunteers for a deep space mission that many whispered was a suicide run. They were humanity's best hope in understanding the ancient warnings left in the ruins of the Vega outpost. Warnings that spoke of a galaxy destroyer, something so old and powerful that even the most advanced alien civilizations simply fled when it came. No one had expected them to come back. Not until today. On the edge of the Sol system, an anomaly opened. A tear in space itself. Sensors screamed, satellites overloaded, and panic spread fast through the United Earth Command. But when the light faded, there it was. Valor, intact, or at least something that wore its shape. It didn't look like a human ship anymore. Its hull shimmered like obsidian, outlined in glowing veins of crimson and cobalt light. Spikes jutted from its sides like the spines of some great cosmic beast. The old serial number was still faintly visible, but everything else about it felt alien, impossibly advanced, even threatening. Admiral Sarah Locke stood at the observation deck of the UEN Fortress Ark, her eyes locked on the returning ship. Her throat tightened. She had known people on that mission, friends, her own brother, and for a decade she had buried them in her heart like ghosts. "This can't be real," she whispered. "They were dead. They were gone." The communications array pinged, an incoming transmission from Valor. It wasn't just a voice message. It was a live feed. Every officer in the command bridge turned to watch. The screen lit up with static, then cleared to show a man, his face half covered in a metallic sheen, like something had fused with his skin. His eyes glowed faintly blue, and wires ran down the side of his neck. But she recognized him. Everyone did. Commander Cale Rennox, former captain of Valor, presumed KIA. He smiled, slow and haunting. "We're back," he said. "And we've changed." There was silence, except for the low hum of systems trying to analyze the signal. Even the AI assistant, Nova, seemed hesitant. Kyle continued. "The galaxy is not what you thought it was, and the destroyer, it's awake now. We've seen it, fought it, survived it." Locke leaned in. "What do you mean, survived it?" Kyle's face grew colder. "We weren't ready back then. No one was. But we've spent 10 years outside of time, in a place that doesn't obey your physics or your fears. We found something. No, we became something. And now we've returned, not to warn, but to lead." The screen flickered. For a split second, an image flashed, an enormous, world-sized being with tendrils of darkness that consumed entire stars, the galaxy's destroyer, real, alive, and moving. "Prep your fleets," Cale said, "or die." The transmission cut. Chaos erupted. Some officers wanted to shoot Valor down immediately, convinced it was compromised. Others argued for quarantine. But Locke, still frozen in place, only whispered one thing. "He's not lying." Because deep in her gut, she felt it too. Something was coming. Something ancient. Something human-eating. The entire Sol Council convened an emergency session within the next 6 hours. Representatives from Earth, Mars, Luna, the Titan colonies, even the isolationist Helios network, all sat in the circular war chamber beneath Geneva Dome, every face tight with suspicion and fear. Holograms floated in the center of the room, displaying Valor, orbiting silently near Pluto like a goddamn predator waiting to strike. Admiral Locke stood in the middle of it all, arms crossed, jaw clenched. The others talked, argued, demanded protocols, but her mind stayed locked on one image. Kyle Rennox, barely human anymore, staring into the camera like he'd seen hell, and had brought back a piece of it. "This could be a threat transmission," barked General Hadari from the Martian Directorate. "He may not be human anymore. Hell, the ship may have been hijacked by whatever tech mutated him. This is a contagion risk at best, an invasion at worst." "He spoke like he still was human," Locke said firmly. "Changed, yes, but not lost. You think an alien would remember the names of Earth squadrons or recite our battle code from the Titan Wars?" Kale did. He remembered. "Or its mimicry," Helios Network's Chancellor Vera hissed. "No one survives that long in dark space without becoming something else." The room erupted into overlapping voices, arguments, accusations, fear clawing its way up through every syllable. Locke knew they wouldn't agree. They never did. Not until it was far too late. She turned to the communications officer, a young techie with a trembling voice. "Open a private channel to Valor." "Ma'am?" "You heard me. Now." The boy nodded and patched it through. Locke stepped aside, away from the squabbling politicians, and stared at the small console as the signal pulsed in low hums. A moment later, Kyle's face appeared again. This time, the background revealed more. A bridge bathed in dark violet lighting, crew members moving in silence, many of them altered like him. Some with gleaming tech instead of limbs, others with faint glows in their veins. "Sarah," Kyle said softly, "I was wondering when you'd call." "You told me to prep the fleets. That's a war call, Kyle. You know what you're asking." "I do, but what's coming doesn't care about your councils or their slow, gutless politics. It devours whole star systems. It doesn't talk. It doesn't negotiate. It only consumes." She leaned in. "Tell me what happened to you. Where have you been for 10 years? Kyle's expression darkened. "We fell through the rift beyond Andromeda. It wasn't a part of space. It was a cage, a test, or maybe a forge. Time didn't move right there. Days turned into years, and years into something else entirely. We weren't alone. There were others trapped too. Creatures, machines, echoes of civilizations wiped out. And you survived?" "No," he said bitterly. "We adapted. We evolved. We made pacts with things that were barely sentient. We fused tech older than the galaxy with what we had. We sacrificed. Some of us didn't make it. But those who did, we came back different. Stronger. Changed. But still human in soul." Locke was silent. She studied his face, Kale's face, but it was hard to see the man she once knew behind the glow of synthetic nerves and emotionless calm. "Will your people follow you?" she asked finally. "They already do. Every soul on Valor chose to return. They know what's at stake." Then his tone dropped low, steel in every word. "And we didn't come back just to warn. We came back to fight." A sharp alert beeped on Locke's console. She tapped it, and her blood went cold. A listening post on the outer edge of the Andromeda corridor had gone dark. No transmission, no power. Another alert, then another. 8 outer beacons, offline. Then came the last signal. Static. Then a single frame of blackness, with one single glowing red eye burning in the void. The destroyer had crossed the border. Kyle saw it too. His face shifted into something cold, something ready. "We don't have time to argue anymore," he said. "It's already here." Locke swallowed hard. "Then God help us all." Kyle's eyes narrowed. "No," he said. "We are what gods fear." The galaxy's alarm bells were no longer silent warnings. They were full-blown screams. Over the next 12 hours, entire sectors fell dark. The Cygnus relay gone. The Hylarian defense grid, one of the most advanced alien protection systems, overrun without firing a single shot. Surveillance footage from the Juno cluster showed only seconds of the creature's arrival before the feeds dissolved into black static, accompanied by what analysts described as a pulse of something that felt alive. And then, transmissions from refugees started pouring in, fragmented, chaotic. It was like a planet, but moving. Everything just melted, like the stars themselves were afraid. We begged it, screamed at it, but it didn't even know we existed. At United Earth Command, Locke watched each clip with increasing nausea. It wasn't just a destroyer, it was annihilation incarnate, and it wasn't slowing down. On the far side of the solar system, Valor sat still, almost eerily calm, like it had been waiting for this exact moment. Locke boarded her shuttle without council approval. The guards tried to stop her. Orders were shouted, threats thrown. But she didn't listen. She had lived through 2 planetary wars. She had watched helplessly as the Mars Rebellion turned cities into dust. and she had buried her brother under a sky still lit by the fires of orbital bombardment. She didn't answer to panic anymore. The docking clamps hissed as her shuttle locked into Valor's side. Her boots clanged onto the foreign alloy of the ship's hull, so smooth it almost felt like touching water. The airlock opened by itself, reacting to her presence before she even touched the panel. Inside, the ship was silent, but not empty. Cale Rennox stood in the corridor, waiting, dressed in armor that looked like it had been grown rather than built. It pulsed faintly with the rhythm of a heartbeat. "You're braver than the rest," he said, stepping forward. "I'm not here to be brave," Locke replied. "I'm here to understand. If we're going to stand a chance, I need to know everything." He nodded once and gestured for her to follow. They walked deeper into the ship, past crew members who barely looked human anymore. One woman had long, fiber-like tendrils instead of hair, linked directly into ship panels. Another floated slightly above the floor, her limbs encased in some kind of exosymbiotic construct that shimmered when she breathed. And yet, they all saluted Locke with discipline. Respect. "They volunteered for the changes," Cale said quietly. "The ship responded to our will, but it cost us." "What did it cost you?" Locke asked. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he opened a large chambered door at the heart of the ship. Inside was a massive sphere suspended in mid-air, glowing with shifting patterns of alien script and human code tangled together like DNA. "This is the heart of Valor," Kyle explained. "It's alive, part organic, born from something we found in the rift. It links us, guides us. It's why we survived." Locke stepped closer. "Is it conscious?" "It's aware, enough to know what's coming. It's seen the destroyer." The sphere pulsed faster, as if in response to their words. Then a panel opened, projecting an image, more detailed than any captured by Earth's systems. The destroyer. A massive, shifting entity of dark matter and living entropy, moving with the force of collapsing galaxies. Its shape never stayed the same. It had no clear face, no symmetry, no rules. It simply was. A living extinction. But this time, it had noticed Earth. Kyle's voice dropped. "This thing was created to erase civilizations that grew too fast. It wasn't born, it was made, and now it's coming to finish what it started 10,000 years ago with the others." "Others?" Locke asked, eyes narrowing. "The ones who tried to fight it before us. Civilizations older than time. Gods to us, and even they failed." She turned to him sharply. "Then what makes you think we won't?" Kyle's eyes lit with a glow more fierce than fire. "Because we're not gods, we're human, and humans, we don't go down quietly." The next move was Earth's, but Earth hesitated. While Kyle and his crew prepared the Valor for war, the rest of the United Earth Coalition floundered in denial. The Council delayed action, caught between fear and bureaucracy, still trying to send diplomatic feelers toward a creature that didn't even recognize life as we knew it. Protests erupted across the inner colonies. "No more wars," the banners said, as if words would stop the thing now making its way through the Centauri gate like it was slicing paper. Locke had seen this before. The same spineless stall, the same unwillingness to face horror until it kicked the door down. She had no patience left. In the command chamber of Valor, Locke stood with Kyle and his modified officers, staring at a massive galactic holomap. Red zones blinked into existence every few minutes, marking newly blacked-out systems. A creeping infection of silence. "The destroyer will hit Earth within 3 solar rotations," Cale said. "It's not here to fight fleets. It won't notice ships. It feeds on life, on energy signatures, entire planetary auras. When it arrives, it won't stop for nukes or diplomacy. It will consume." "And the Council still won't act," Locke muttered. "They're cowards," said a tall officer whose voice echoed strangely. His name was Commander Wren, and he hadn't blinked once since Locke met him. "They think the old way still applies, but old thinking is what got the others killed." Locke rubbed her temples. "How many of your people are battle-ready?" Kyle turned to her, expression grim. "All of them. We've been preparing for 10 years in a space that wanted to unmake us. We know its rhythms, we know its weaknesses, what few it has, but we can't do this alone." "You're not alone anymore," Locke said, her voice firm now. "If Earth won't fight, I will. I'm invoking Article 7 of the Sol Emergency Charter. I'm taking command of any willing fleets." Kyle gave her a long look. Then, finally, a nod. "It won't be enough," he said quietly. "Not with human weapons. That's why you're here. The Valor can't share its power the way you're used to, but if you want to fight with us, you have to become one of us." She stared at him, heartbeat ticking up. "What do you mean?" He led her to the back of the chamber, where another room opened up. Dark, glowing softly, with the same blue and red pulses as the ship's hull. At the center stood a pod, human-shaped but clearly not built for any normal body. "This is the Nexus Forge," Kyle said. "It links the user to the ship's neural web, enhances reflexes, cognition, endurance, but it comes at a cost. You'll never be just human again." Locke didn't blink. "What's the alternative? Watching Earth die while I wait for someone braver?" He smiled then. Not cold, not hollow, just tired. Proud. "You're still you, Sarah. That's what matters. The ship doesn't erase, it amplifies." She stepped forward and entered the pod. The walls closed in, not with metal, but with a kind of living fiber. Warm, humming, like a heartbeat against her skin. She didn't scream when it pierced her spine, didn't cry when the first wave of information hit her. She saw stars collapse. She saw the destroyer birthing black holes in its wake. She saw the dead civilizations Kale had spoken of. Entire races buried in silence, nothing but data ghosts now. But through it all, she also felt something else. Humanity. Raw, unfiltered rage, hope, pain, the defiant refusal to die quietly. The pod opened. Locke stepped out, changed. Not in body, not yet visibly, but her eyes glowed faint blue now, and her voice had gained an edge sharper than steel. "I'm ready," she said. Kyle looked at her, then turned to the others. "Send the call," he ordered. "Every fleet, every rebel outpost, every rogue AI. Tell them Earth's fire is waking up." He paused, and then added quietly, "And if they want to survive this, they better burn with us." The call went out. Not as an order, not as a plea, but as a promise. A pulse sent across the stars, riding the wave of ancient frequencies once used to warn of extinction-level events. Kyle's voice, carried by the ship's living core, echoed through every hidden channel, every encrypted resistance line, every outlaw frequency humanity had ever touched. "This is Commander Kale Renix of the Valor. Earth stands at the edge of annihilation. The galaxy's destroyer is no myth. It's real. We've seen it. We've fought it. And now we bring the fight home. If you can hear this, if you remember what it means to be human, then rise. It's time." And slowly, from the shadows of fear, sparks began to light. On Ganymede, an old mining colony turned ghost town. Rogue engineers hijacked an abandoned dreadnought. On Proxima B, a cluster of genetically modified soldiers broke free from corporate stasis, awakening under the code word reckoning. Even the Martian war clans, who had sworn never to fight for Earth again, sent their blood-slicked banners to orbit. One by one, the strays returned. Not out of loyalty, not for flags or leaders, but because something deep in their DNA screamed not yet. Still, it wasn't enough. Locke knew that as she stood on the Valor's newly formed war deck, watching hundreds of ships gather like moths to a dying flame. They were outgunned, outnumbered, outmatched. Most hadn't seen combat in years. Others were barely more than junk held together by hope and duct tape. But they were theirs. 3 days, Kyle said beside her, his voice low, jaw tight. That's all we've got. It'll breach the Sol Gate in 72 hours. After that, no turning back. Then we hit first, Locke said. Blind it, hurt it, piss it off. Make it bleed. If it even can. We'll find out. Behind them, the Valor thrummed louder now. The ship sensed the coming battle, its core alive with anticipation. The crew, no longer just human, no longer just machine, prepared in silence. Their minds were partially linked now, a hive of thought and purpose. And Locke was one of them. She moved faster, thought sharper. Her fingers danced across interfaces that hadn't even existed a day ago. She no longer needed officers to shout commands. Her intent became action. That terrified her. But it also thrilled her. In the next hour, Earth's remaining orbital fleets aligned into formation. The moon's dark side became a staging ground for planetary artillery. The last of Earth's AI-controlled war drones launched from Antarctica like a swarm of silver hornets. And then came the first sign. A ripple. A distortion just beyond Neptune's orbit. The stars there flickered, then vanished. Not blocked, not hidden. Just gone. As if that slice of space had simply stopped existing. Kyle stepped forward. It's here. The holographic display zoomed in. The destroyer was still out of visual range, but its influence bent reality like heat on metal. Planets tilted slightly off axis. Gravitational fields wept. Sensors began feeding back data that made no mathematical sense. It's unmaking space, said one of Kyle's officers. Ahead of itself. Weapons online, Locke said. Brace all systems. From the bow of the Valor, a section of the ship opened like a blooming flower, revealing a cannon unlike anything humanity had ever seen. It pulsed with rift energy, volatile, ancient, stolen from whatever realm Kale and his crew had clawed their way back from. This thing doesn't die like normal enemies, Kale said. Its core isn't physical. It's bound by entropy fields. We hit it hard and keep hitting. And if it breaks reality, we break it back. As Earth's fleets prepared to fire their first shots, Locke looked out into the dark and felt something ancient staring back. A hunger, a silence that knew her name. She smiled coldly. You want to eat us, she whispered. Then choke on us. And with a nod, she gave the order. All ships, fire. Space lit up like a funeral pyre. Thousands of plasma bolts, rail slugs, ion torpedoes, and rift-charged beams screamed into the abyss. The Earth fleet, ragged, angry, desperate, poured everything it had into the darkness ahead, where the destroyer pulsed like a living storm, bending starlight around its massless form. The first wave hit and disappeared. No explosion. No ripple. Just silence. The shots vanished as if they had been swallowed by a throat that refused to chew. On the Valor, Locke clenched her fists as data streamed in. No impact. No damage. Her voice came out like gravel. Everything just blinked. Expected, Kale said without panic. That's its veil. Its shell exists partially outside time, absorbing kinetic signatures before they reach it. But it's not invulnerable. He gestured to Ren. Pulse up the rift core. 10%. Target anomaly's gravitational center. Ren's eyes flickered pale gold as he synced to the ship's weapon systems. The ship began to hum, a deep, throbbing resonance that felt like it came from the bones of the universe itself. Then the Valor fired. The rift cannon roared with a soundless scream, and a beam of light black energy lanced out, so dark it hurt to look at. It didn't move through space. It tore through it, unraveling the distance between here and there like someone had ripped a page out of a book. The beam struck, and this time, something happened. The space around the destroyer shivered, not exploded, not cracked, just reacted, as if the beam had touched something real underneath the illusion. The sensor board pulsed. "Anomaly slowed," Nova reported. 0.02% reduction in forward expansion. It wasn't much, but it was something. "We can hurt it," Locke breathed, but then the destroyer responded. It didn't shoot. It didn't fire a weapon. It simply opened. The blackness around it split, revealing a core of blinding white and roiling red, a heart of stars being born and killed in the same breath. From within, it came tendrils, massive streams of entropy, curling like smoke but moving with intention. One tendril reached toward Saturn. The planet's defenses, satellite rings, orbital guns, shield grids, didn't even register a threat until it was too late. The tendril didn't strike the surface. It touched the planet's magnetic field, and Saturn's rings exploded in all directions as if every atom had been told to forget it existed. Then it reached the moon Enceladus. The icy moon flashed once, bright and blue, and then vanished like a candle snuffed out. "All ships evasive now!" Locke shouted, her voice merging with the ship's systems as Valor pulsed red. "Don't let it get close. Don't let it touch anything." The destroyer wasn't just consuming. It was rewriting. Ren muttered something under his breath. "This thing is unraveling reality ahead of itself. It's converting existence into raw entropy." "Then we cut the feed," Kyle said. He raised his hand, and the ship's inner core glowed hotter. Behind them, dozens of linked crew fell into deeper trance, feeding more of their minds into the Valor's neural web. The ship responded immediately, shifting its structure, sprouting wing-like fins of rift-conductive alloy that split open like celestial blades. Locke barely had time to react before they jumped. No countdown. No warning. Just gone. The Valor blinked forward, bypassing all known space protocols, arriving within a breath's distance of the destroyer's threshold. Up close, it looked nothing like what sensors had shown. It was a wound in space, a bleeding hole, a place where rules had gone to die. Kyle pointed toward a slowly turning core of anti-light, pulsing at the center. "That's where we hit. That's its tether point." "You mean, that's its brain?" "No," he said flatly. "It doesn't have one. That's the seed, where it was planted. If we kill that, it goes dormant. Maybe forever." Locke nodded once. "Then let's kill it." Ren opened the rift cannon to 40%. The ship shook violently. Even with neural dampeners, Locke felt her vision flicker, her thoughts stretch and twist. Part of her mind touched something outside herself, something that watched her like a curious god. "Firing," Ren said. The second beam unleashed. This time the destroyer screamed, not with sound, but with memory. Visions slammed into Locke's mind. Cities burning, a woman on fire, a child hiding beneath a broken dome, 1,billion deaths in a breath. "Stay with me," Kyle roared as systems flared red and white. "Don't let it in your head." The Valor bucked, but the beam held true, and the core began to crack. It wasn't over. But for the first time in 10,000 years, the destroyer was bleeding. The destroyer bled stars. As the second rift beam tore through its core, ruptures spread like lightning veins across the impossible surface of the thing, rips in reality itself. Energy poured out in bursts of white and violet, waves that tore space like tissue paper. Whole sectors of the battle map flickered out, not because the ships there were destroyed, but because the coordinates they occupied had stopped existing. And still it lived. The scream hadn't stopped. It wasn't just sound or psychic backlash anymore. It had become presence, an all-consuming pressure that pressed into the minds of every living thing within 50 light minutes. Pilots on the Martian front began to convulse. A dozen AIs short-circuited, looping through existential paradoxes as the destroyer's nature leaked into their logic cores. Even the more hardened soldiers began to whisper to themselves, as if something had gotten inside. Locke gritted her teeth, holding her ground at the Valor's command nexus, her hands trembling over the interface. "We cracked it," she muttered. "Why isn't it falling?" Kyle stood beside her, his jaw clenched so tight she could hear it creak. "Because it doesn't know how to die. It wasn't made to end." He motioned to Ren. "Hit it again. Maximum draw." Ren hesitated. At that level, the ship's core could destabilize. "We're out of time." The destroyer was reacting now, no longer a passive juggernaut. Its tendrils lashed across space, each one targeting a different system. One slammed into a cruiser formation near Jupiter, warping the gravity so violently the ships collapsed inward like crumpled foil. Another reached toward Earth itself, faster than any known propulsion. "Shields up!" Locke barked, but the Earth wasn't ready. The planetary shield grid flickered as the tendril pierced into orbit. It didn't strike the surface. It didn't have to. All around the world, power stations exploded, satellites failed, communications blacked out. The destroyer didn't need to conquer. It needed to disconnect humanity from itself, to isolate, to silence. Back on the Valor, the crew was already redlining. Sweat poured from Locke's brow as her neural link pulsed dangerously. Images not her own flickered behind her eyes. Burnt faces, dead stars, long-gone civilizations whispering "Join us." The ship screamed through her spine. Kyle grabbed her arm. "We have one shot left. What happens if it fails?" He looked at her, and for the first time since his return, she saw fear crack through the metal calm. "Then we die. But if we don't try, Earth dies screaming." She gave a slow nod. "Do it." Ren tapped into the core. The rift engine roared, brighter than ever before. The walls of the ship seemed to phase in and out of existence. Crew members dropped to their knees. Some bled from their eyes. Others began to glow. "We're not just overloading," Kyle said. "We're letting it see us, letting it remember us." Locke staggered. "Remember us?" He turned to her. "This thing wasn't built to destroy random life. It's programmed. It follows patterns, a code, a directive." "You mean?" she whispered, a chill sliding down her spine. "Someone built this thing to kill species like ours?" "Not someone," he said. "A civilization that feared chaos, that feared what came after them. They built the destroyer to erase anything that evolved too quickly. It's not evil. It's a reset button." Locke stepped towards the command node and placed her hand on it. "Then let's make damn sure it never gets pressed again." The rift cannon surged, now burning with every drop of power left in the ship. Kyle joined her. So did Rain. One by one, the crew linked their minds, their memories, their humanity, not into a weapon, but into a message. As the cannon fired, it didn't just launch energy. It launched identity, a beam filled with images, the face of a laughing child, a violin in a war zone, two lovers holding hands as the bombs fell. Every war, every triumph, every act of defiance and joy. The destroyer froze. It pulsed once, twice, then it reeled back, its core split, unraveling into fractal shards of light and shadow. It screamed again, this time not in rage but in confusion. In memory, the weapon had pierced more than code. It had pierced purpose. The destroyer began to break apart. Chunks of it peeled into nothingness, and the tendrils withdrew like a tide. Reality trembled, but didn't collapse. The impossible was happening. They were winning. But as Locke slumped, breathless, drained, she felt a final, ice-cold whisper crawl through her mind. One was defeated, but others still sleep. Her eyes snapped open. This wasn't the end. It was only the first. The galaxy fell silent. Not a peaceful silence. No. This was the sharp, breathless kind, like the second after a gunshot when the smoke is still in the air and everyone's waiting to see who falls. The destroyer, the thing that had erased civilizations older than Earth's sun, was breaking apart before them. Its tendrils collapsed inward, twitching spasmodically as pieces of its core imploded one by one, folding into themselves with quiet, terrifying elegance. And then, with a final convulsion, it vanished. No explosion, no debris. Just gone. The Valor's command bridge hung in stunned silence. The hum of the rift core dropped to a whisper. The ship, like its crew, was trembling, exhausted. Locke could barely stay standing. Her entire body felt wrong, stretched too thin, too far. Her heart pounded like it wasn't entirely inside her anymore, but she was alive. "We did it," Ren said in disbelief, voice cracked and shaking. "It's over." Kyle didn't speak. He stared into the space where the destroyer had been, his hands gripping the console, knuckles pale. Locke didn't feel joy. She felt dread. Because that last voice in her mind, that whisper, wasn't Kyle's. And it wasn't from the destroyer. It came from something else, something older, a presence that hadn't spoken until now, something that had watched the battle unfold. And it hadn't interfered. "They built more," she said softly. "That thing wasn't the only one." Kyle turned slowly toward her. His expression was cold now, calculating. "I know." "You knew," she said flatly. He didn't deny it. "We found records in the rift," he said. "The architects, the ones who created the destroyers, they seeded hundreds across the universe. Some woke early, some never activated, some are still dreaming." "So this wasn't a final battle," Locke said. "It was a field test." Kyle nodded. "And we proved one thing." "What's that?" "That humanity can't be erased." Locke's hands shook, not from fear, no, that had passed, but from the weight of what came next. Earth was safe, for now, but the cost? Dozens of systems gone, millions dead, a fleet barely holding itself together, and worse, now they were on the radar, not just of one weaponized extinction machine, but of the civilization that built them. A tone chimed on the console. Nova, the AI, spoke up with an eerie calm. "Long-range sensor network is detecting subspace disturbances across 5 known void sectors. Pulse signatures consistent with dormant destroyer-class entities, fluctuating." "They're waking up," Ren whispered. "No," Locke said. "We woke them up." Kyle exhaled slowly. "The moment we fought back, the universe noticed. The balance they created just shifted." Locke looked out across the hologrid, where fractured ships and burning wreckage still floated near Earth. Ships that should never have made it. Crews who refused to surrender. Humans who chose to fight the impossible. And won. She turned back to Kale. "Then we don't wait for the next one." He raised an eyebrow. "We go to them," she said. "We hunt the others, one by one, before they come crawling to our doorstep." Kyle's expression cracked into the faintest smile. "That sounds like something I'd say." "You infected me," she said dryly. He shrugged. "That's what Valor does." Nova's voice returned. "Incoming message from Earth Command. Council requests immediate debrief." Locke didn't even look toward the screen. "Tell them to wait." Response? "Tell them we're busy saving the rest of the galaxy." The ship groaned slightly, as if stretching, waking up from its own battle fatigue. New pulses lit along its spine. Its rift core stabilized and then pulsed with renewed strength. Whatever the crew had sacrificed to make it fight, it had worked. And now, it was evolving again. The crew didn't ask for permission. They moved to stations, eyes glowing with quiet purpose. They didn't cheer, they didn't cry. They simply readied for what came next. Kyle stood beside Locke. "So, Admiral, where to first?" Locke stared at the map, 5 red pulses blinking like distant threats. Silent, deadly, waiting. "Whichever one's biggest," she said. "And the others?" "They can wait their turn." The Valor turned slowly in orbit, drifting like a blade above the Earth that had forgotten how to sleep. Below, the people celebrated, unaware that peace had just become the start of a war stretching across stars. A war no one else remembered, but humanity refused to forget. And when the Valor jumped again, this time toward the enemy, no one prayed for survival. They prayed for the enemy to run,